on Masechet Berachot, and we are on Daf Lamed Chet Amud Bet 38b. That is the learning of Amud Yomi for Chodesh Shvan has been sponsored by Shahab and Rabbi for the health, prosperity, and Hatzlacha and growth in Torah for their family, and also by Hami family, Leilu Nishpat Yosef ben Kasimha, Kasimha bat Rachel, Alizat Hadia Sarah bat Chanoch Feivel, the Neshamot Shtavan Aliyah, the Limud of Amud Yomi for been sponsored by Ruzbe and Jessica Javaheri for the Fu'ah of Devorah bat Rivka, and also for Leilui Nishmat Rahamim ben Yosef Moshe by our own very Mayar Zargari, that his neshama should have tremendous aliyah. Amen.
Amen.
So we have started a discussion of the bracha on the path, and we had a very interesting back and forth in the Shita of Rav Shmuel versus Rabbi Yochanan. What do you say on cooked vegetables? We started with cooked bread, and now we got into shlakot, cooked vegetables. We mentioned that both Rav Chisda and Rav Nachman, they mentioned in the name of Ula that vegetables, Rabbi Yochanan held, if you have cooked vegetables, you say on them, Shahakol Nihiya Bidvaro. Right? This is the concept that we had yesterday, and today we're going to challenge that a little bit. So 13 lines up from where the lines widen, we have the Gemara Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Shlakot mevarchin alehem bore pri adama. Shlakot, you say bore pri adama on. Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefes. So this is surprising, right? We expected, based on what we did yesterday, because we had Ula. Ula said both Rav Chisda, thank you, and Rav Nachman, both of them said in the name of Ula, that he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, right? That shlakot is shakol, right? So this is what we thought is going to be pashut. Now all of a sudden comes Rabbi Chia bar Abba, who Rabbi Chia bar Abba is a tremendous student of Rabbi Yochanan, and he is one of the main lines of Mesorah. And comes Rabbi Chia bar Abba and says, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and he says, you remember we mentioned whenever he says Amar is a direct quote. So he says, Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, directly from Rabbi Yochanan, right? He heard that Shalakot is Ha'adama. Now, this doesn't end here. Says this same Rabbi Yossi. Sorry, Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shalakot mevarchin alehem bore pri adama. Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet, in contrast to that, is Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet, who holds in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, also is going to be Shakol. Now we have three people who say Shakol, and we have this one Rabbi Chia bar Abba that holds his Hadama. You see what's happening here? So says the Gemara, a very interesting, unprecedented thing. Gemara says, Amar Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak said, clearly, both Rab Chisda and Rab Nachman heard from Ula, right? That he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan is Shakol. That's clear. Both of them, different people, heard from Ula the same thing. So says Nachman, Ula made a mistake because, well, Rabbi Yochanan can't hold both of them. Somebody is making a mistake. So me and you would think, if you have 3 versus 1, you go after the 3. Says Gemara, no. Ula,
go for the 1, no?
You go for, we would think you should follow the majority of the 3. Rabbi Nachman says no. Ula also heard what he heard from Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet.
This is a different Rabbi Nachman, the Rabbi Nachman who said in the name of Ula.
So says the Gemara.
Why does that matter? If it's shakal at the end of the day for all of them, anyways.
No, you want to know if on cooked vegetable you say shakol adama. We already had a machloket that Rav and Shmuel they had what they had versus Rabbi Yochanan, right? They said adama, right?
Yeah.
Now they say shakol. Rabbi Yochanan says, but here the Gemara says Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet says shakol. And Rabbi Bar Abba says, Ha'adama. So says the Gemara, this is how it worked. Amar Rab Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Kava Ula leshabeshte ke Rabbi Binyamin ben Yefet. Ula heard the mistaken quotation of Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet. In other words, it's a mistake on the side of Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet, who misunderstood or misquoted Rabbi Yochanan to say shakol, but and Ula heard it from him, and they heard it from Ula. So everybody is quoting each other. It's not really 3 people. It is only 1. So what do you have over here? You have Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet versus Rabbi Bar Abba. No, well, they heard it in the name of Ula, that Ula said the Shita of Rabbi Yochanan has been Shakol. There's no Amar over there. If you take a look back, right, it says, Darash Rabchista Mishum Rabbeinu, Umanu Rab, Shelakod Marchanam Bore Priyadama, V'Rabotenu Ayordin Meres Yisrael. And who is it? Who is the Rabotenu that came down from Eretz Yisrael? It's Ula, Mishmet Rabbi Yochanan. It's Mishemeh Rabbi Yochanan. You see how we said it. Always when it says Mishemeh, is a reference of we heard the Shita of Rabbi Yochanan is. It's not that I directly heard it from him, right? So it's not a direct quote. Ula says, I heard that the Shita of Rabbi Yochanan is Shakol Niya Bidvaro. We don't know who he heard it from, right? He never said who he heard it from. So the Gemara over here is saying, here you have direct quotation. Here, Rabbi Bar Abba says, I heard from Rabbi Yochanan that shalakot, cooked vegetables, is Adama. I heard it from him. Right? And what does Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet say? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, also is a direct quote. So these 2 top ones are not direct quotation, these 2. These 2 are direct quote. So says the Gemara, these 2 people heard it from Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet also. So what you have at the end of the day is a face-off between Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet and Rabbi Chia. Now the Gemara really gives it to Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet. Before topping it off with 2 stories directly from Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara says, what do you think? You think you could compare Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet with Rabbi Chia Bar Abba? They're in different planes of existence. They're not in the same level of rabbinate at all, says the Gemara. And that's why the Gemara calls it with such a strong language. Amar Rab Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Kava Ula leshabeshtek Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet. It's a mistake that has been brought on by Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet. Ula must have heard it from Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefet, and now everyone is quoting everyone in a mistaken format. Then look at what the Gemara says. Tahi bar Rabbi Zera, who had gone from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, He was shocked. He was surprised. Says Rabbi Zera, can you even put their name in the same page? They're incomparable people together. You can't. It's like, imagine if you're comparing one of the Chacham Obadiah with a yeshiva student that just just became ninth grade. You can't compare them together. Rabbi Chiya bar Abba dayik v'gamir shmatata mi Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi. Rabbi Chiya bar Abba was the prized student of Rabbi Yochanan. Everything that Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Chiya bar Abba would quote his sayings verbatim. He was dayik v'gamir shmata mi Rabbi Yochanan. He was so specific about the different details of what Rabbi Yochanan taught, more than anybody else in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet lo dayik. Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet was not such a top student. He was not necessarily dayik. He was not necessarily very specific about the language to say it exactly how Rabbi Yochanan had said it. So you have on one hand, Rabbi Chiya bar Abba was dedicated to the language and to the details of the teachings of Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet was just not like that. On the other hand, ve'od Rabbi Chiya bar Abba kol telatin yomin. This is the interesting one. Rabbi Chiya bar Abba every 30 days mehader talmudeh kamed Rabbi Yochanan. He would come, sit in front of Rabbi Yochanan, and he says, I am going to review everything that you taught me. Please listen and correct me if there is anything that's not exactly like what you said. Every month, on a monthly basis, he would sit with his Rabbi Yochanan, and he would review everything he had learned with Rabbi Yochanan to make sure that he is on par with exactly what Rabbi Yochanan had taught. There's no misunderstandings, there's no misquotations. Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet lo mahader. Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet didn't do that. So therefore, what the Gemara is saying is, if you have Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet versus Rabbi Chiya, it leaves you no question who to listen to. Who you listen to is Rabbi Chiya bar Abba. So therefore, I just erase Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet in front of Rabbi Chiya, and since Rav Chisda and Rav Nachman also were calling Ula, who got his shita from Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet, I do away with that also. We're left with Rabbi Chiya bar Abba, who holds, even Rabbi Yochanan holds that Shlakot mevarech alehen borei pri adama. So now we have Rav, who holds Shlakot is hadama. We have Shmuel, who holds Shlakot is hadama, and we have Rabbi Yochanan even that holds Shlakot mevarech alehen borei pri adam. Okay.
If Rabbi Benjamin makes mistakes and he's not precise, why is he even mentioned?
Okay, that's political questions I don't answer. No, all jokes aside, that's only when you have a face-off between him and it's not that he was not a reliable person. It says if you have people do make mistakes. You have Gemara that says Amoraim were discussing what they heard from their Rebbe. There were two students, and this one Kafatz Benishba. He jumped and he took an oath that he heard like this, and the other one jumped and took an oath that he heard like this. Mistakes do happen. But when you have someone in the caliber of Rabbi Chiya bar Abba versus someone that's lower, even though the Gemara makes him sound like he's not a competent, of course a competent person, but when you have him compared with Rabbi Chiya bar Abba, it's a different league of dedication to the transmission of the Torah of the Rebbe, right? He every time was very specific about the language of Rabbi Yochanan, and every 30 days he would do review. So if you have him versus Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet,
All students of Rabbi Yochanan, or
yeah. So says the Gemara, ve'od bar minden, and it's on top of all of that, aside from this and aside from that. Aside from the fact that he was medayek, aside from the fact that he would review every 30 days, I have a story. Ma'aser Rav. Story directly with Rabbi Yochanan himself. Dehahi turmusa de shakli le sheva zimnin. You had this cooked vegetable that they cooked it 7 times. Not once, not twice. It was mamash lakot. Bekedera ve'achli le Bekinuach Seuda, and they brought it at the end of Seuda as dessert. Atu v'shalu Rabbi Yochanan, and they came and asked the scholar in residence, Rabbi Yochanan was there. They asked him, what bracha do you make on this turmus that they cooked 7 times? Rabbi Yochanan himself said, you say Borei Priya Adama. And another story. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, the same Rabbi Chia bar Abba, is not only that he said in the yeshiva I heard from Rabbi Yochanan that this is Hadama, but he had a story. Says, I remember, says Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Ra'iti et Rabbi Yochanan she'achal zayit maliach. I saw Rabbi Yochanan that he ate a pickled olive. And what did he say, bracha on it? He ate this zayit maliach, ubarich aleh techila basof. And he said bracha on it in the beginning and at the end. Now, what's the hidush over here that he said bracha in the beginning and at the end? It doesn't say what bracha he made, right? So first of all, before we even get into the crux of this story, what does this have to do with shlakot? Because we have a concept in Yoreh De'ah that maliach keroteach, that when you salt something, process of salting, not just pouring salt, when you salt pickle, brine pickle something, that is considered halachically tantamount to cooking it. So therefore, a pickled olive has the same halachic status as shlakot, as cooked vegetable. So says the Gemara, he said bracha on it, and the Gemara wants to prove that the bracha that Rabbi Yochanan said was ha'etz, not shahakol. Because in other words, if you're talking about the machloket of shlakot, whether or not you say ha'adama or shahakol, that the equivalent of that in a pickled olive would be whether or not you say ha'etz or shahakol on it, right? So the Gemara says, from the fact that he said bracha in the beginning and at the end, must be that he said ha'etz and ha'etz, right? He said bracha rishona ha'etz, and bracha achrona al men shalosh, right? Right? Al perot. It says, why is that? Because, of course, it's one of the sheva minim, right? And if you say ha'etz, normally speaking, you say ha'etz and you say men shalosh at the end, right? But if you say shahakol on it, that means the essence of the fruit is no longer there, right? The essence of the fruit is no longer there. What bracha achrona you make on it? You wouldn't make men shalosh any longer, but you don't make men shalosh. Who says that on a sheva minim you could say borei nefashot? We never had precedent for that. Borei nefashot is for when you have a piece of meat, you have some egg, you have some water. So the Gemara wants to, based on this, learn that when he says, when Rabbi Chia bar Abba said, Rabbi Yochanan said bracha rishona and said bracha achrona, must be that he meant that he said borei pri ha'etz in the beginning, because the fruit, it's teaching you that it hasn't lost its essence, so therefore you make ha'etz in the beginning and you make al perot ben shalosh at the end. So you see from here also another story from Rabbi Yochanan, that on shlakot, quote unquote, he made the bracha of the fruit, the vegetable itself. This is what the Gemara wants to suggest. The Gemara is going to shoot it down now, right? So the Gemara says, "Ubarich aleh tchila v'sof." So amrad b'shlama shlakot b'miltayu kaimi. If you say shlakot, cooked vegetables, b'miltayu kaimi, they have preserved their essence, and therefore you make ha'adama on them, which equivalent of that would be that uncooked or pickled olive also it has kept its essence, and therefore you make ha'etz on it. That goes together. That means that in the beginning you say borei pri ha'etz, ulbasaf mevarech alav bracha achal men shalosh, and at the end you say men shalosh, right? First wide line. Ela yamra shlakot, but if you say shlakot la b'miltayu kaimi, that the shlakot, the cooked vegetables, they haven't preserved their essence, and now they're no longer considered their original essence. And therefore, you want to suggest that on cooked vegetables should say shahakol. So equivalent of that on olives should be what? Also shahakol. If it hasn't maintained its essence, is no longer ha'etz, but it goes down a level, it becomes shahakol. So if it becomes shahakol, what bracha achrona you make on it? Nothing. The Gemara wants to suggest. So from the fact that you see Rabbi Chiya bar Abba said, Rabbi Yochanan, I saw him say bracha achrona, say an after bracha on the zayit, on the olive, must be that he said ha'etz in the beginning. And if he said ha'etz in the beginning, must be that he held it has preserved and kept its original essence. You hear how it's going? Okay, so the Gemara says, no, it's not. Who are you making a whole high rise on top of this? Who said? Maybe halakha is like Chacham Abraham over here suggested, right? That you say, but a nefashot on it. Who says you can't say nefashot? Right? Because bora nefashot is an overarching bracha. Now, don't take this to halakha right now, okay? But the Gemara's suggestion is that bora nefashot is like shahakol. Shahakol, the Gemara says, ala kol imamar shahakol niya bidvaro yatsa. On everything, if you say shahakol by mistake on everything, you're yotze. You don't have to go back and say bracha again. Chacham Ovadia used to say, shahakol is the bracha of ameh haaretz. So in many Sephardi countries, they would take anything, say, don't know shahakol, right? It's amaretz. Like, yeah, you're yotze, but you're amaretz, that you don't know what bracha you have to say on it. So nefashot also, the Gemara wants to suggest now, perhaps nefashot also is the same type of thing. Because what you're saying is, bora nefashot rabot v'chesronan, al kol mashbarata lahayot b'ayim v'shkol chai, everything, including everything basically in there. Halachically speaking, we're not talking halacha. It becomes a big machloket, but the evid, what nefashot covers, what doesn't cover, we'll get into that b'ezrat Hashem at some time. We'll get to that in just a few lines. Very good. Very good. Right? Says the Gemara. So if you want to suggest that he said shahakol in the beginning, why was he saying bracha achrona? The Gemara says, no. That's not a good proof. Maybe he said bora nefashot, and maybe bora nefashot covers even if you had some extract of Shivata minim, of the 7 species, right? So therefore, even though that you can't say al ha'etz on it, right? Al ha'etz al pri ha'etz, the bracha mein shalosh, because it hasn't kept its essence. But maybe Rabbi Yochanan said Rabbi Yochanan said al ha'etz. Maybe he said bora nefashot. So therefore, that last proof we X'd it out. So we have 2/3 things. One is Rabbi Chiya bar Abba is a reliable person. He reviewed his Talmud in front of his Rabbi Yochanan once in 30 days. And also, we have a story that happened with Rabbi Yochanan, that they had this turmus, that they cooked it 7 times. And they came and asked Rabbi Yochanan, what bracha chacham, what bracha we make on this? And he said, what a priyadama. So therefore, we are sticking with this so far, that not only Rav and Shmuel hold that cooked vegetables are ha'adama, but even Rabbi Yochanan, who we originally said in the name of Rabbi Chisda, Rabbi Nachman, in the name of Ula, that Rabbi Yochanan holds in shahakol, we fall off of that also. Even Rabbi Yochanan holds that cooked vegetables is priyadama. Says the Gemara. Second wide line at the end, Mativ Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel asked a question. Yirakot she'adam yotze b'hen yidei chuvато b'Pesach, yotze b'hen u'bekelach shelahen, aval lo kibushin velo shlukin. The yirakot that you use for maror and leil Pesach, if you put it in water and it became kavush, right? This is, by the way, something very halachic, right? Sometimes the wives are working hard Erev Pesach, and you're trying to wash the romaine lettuce for maror, and then you just forget it in the water. You soak it in the water and you forget it. It stays there overnight. Not good, because it becomes kavush. Now the Gemara, staying overnight, it perhaps becomes kavush. 24 hours for sure would become kavush. According to the Shita of Rabbi Rutam, it could become even kavush in a smaller amount of time, and so on. So says the Gemara, any vegetable that you could use as maror on Leil Pesach, the leaves, the stem, you could be yotze with them, aval lo kivushin velo shlukin, but not when they are kavush, not when they have stayed in water for 24 hours, and not when they have been cooked, right? Pickled in water for 24 hours already renders them invalid, and also cooking them renders them invalid. So wait. The isal kadatach. This is a question. Remember, this is a kasha. The Gemara is asking a question. Well, says, wait a second. We are saying in this braita that if you cook vegetables, they no longer keep their status, because this is a vegetable that I could have as maror on Leil Pesach, and now that I cooked it, I no longer could be yotze with it on Leil Pesach. So you see that it doesn't keep its essence, right? And that should infer that if it doesn't keep its essence, the bracha should be shakol. So how in the world are you telling me Rav, Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan, everyone holds the same word priyadama should be shakol? You can't even eat the thing on Leil Pesach. It completely alters its essence to the degree that you cannot be yotze with it maror. Says the Gemara, so it says, why is it? If you say that they have kept their essence, why cooked maror you cannot be yotze with it? Gemara says, no, come down from the high horse. It's nothing to do with our sugya. Like you missed the boat type of thing. Like it is a completely different sugya. Just like we had before, that by matzah mevushelet, when you cook matzah, you can't be yotze with it on Pesach. And we said, why? Because you need ta'am matzah. You need taste of matzah. Over here also, you're eating maror for what? For fun? No, you're eating maror because you need ta'am maror. You need the taste of maror. If you cook it, have you ever cooked onions or garlics? What does garlic become when you cook it? Sweet. It doesn't it tastes like anything but garlic. Now, you only know it because you know cooked garlic tastes like this. But it's no resemblance of the sharp, strong taste of garlic beforehand. So that's not maror, but it has nothing to do with the sugya of brachot. Sugya of brachot has to do with, is this a normal way of hana'ah from this? Is it not normal hana'ah from this? That's the sugya of brachot. Over here, you need taste of maror, you need a sharp taste, and it loses its sharpness, its edge, when you cook it or when you pickle it. So it says the Gemara, Shani hatam d'ba'in tam maror beleka. Over there we need tam maror, taste of bitterness. And when you cook it leka, there's no taste of bitterness the way we want it. Amale Rabbi Yirmiyah, last line. Amale Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Yirmiyah said to Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Yochanan hechi mevarech al zayit maliach. So he said, wait a second, you said something that tickled my interest. You said that there was this story that Rabbi Yochanan took a zayit, one olive, and he said bracha rishona on it, and then he said bracha achrona on it. Like Chacham Abraham over here asked, so how in the world can you say a bracha achrona on a zayit? Now this is one of the most ironic things, because we always say kazayit. But when you eat a zayit, an actual zayit, you can't say bracha achrona because you're not eating the pit, hopefully. You're taking the pit out. So a kazayit, which means the volume of a zayit, is always less than kazayit. So how in the world did he have one zayit and he said bracha achrona? It makes no sense. Says Gemara, came on the shaklenek arineh once he took out the pit, Basir Leshiura, it no longer has, quote, kazayit. Amane, he said, wait a second. Mi savrat kazayit gadol ba'inan. You think we need like a massive zayit to say bracha achrona? No. You have small olives, you have medium olives, and you have large olives. When we say you say bracha achrona on a zayit, on a kazayit, which one do you think we are referring to? A medium one, not a large one. A medium one. And Rabbi Yochanan, what they brought him, he's the Rosh Hashiva, you think they brought him a medium zayit? They went and they brought like the zayit that you have to carry it with a carriage. You know, what are the nice, beautiful zayits? We had a Chanukah a few years ago for the kids. We had this thing of pressing olives and making olive oil in the Beit HaMikdash. So we had a whole show for them, and the olives that you actually used, the olives that they got, were like each one of them was like this big, large. I've never seen such large olives in my life. So that's like large olives of that nature is what they brought Rabbi Yochanan. So even when you took out the pit, still he had in it kazayit. Says the Gemara, you think we need kazayit gadol, a large zayit for saying bracha achrona? No, kazayit benoni ba'inan. We need only a benoni ve'ahu da'aiti lakamel Rabbi Yochanan, and the one that he gave Rabbi Yochanan, zayit gadol havo, was a large zayit. Even though that he took the pit out, still pash shiura, still had a shiur of kazayit. Ditnan, as we learned in the Mishnayot, this is a Mishnayot in Masachet Kelim, surprisingly, because talking about Dinet Tumah V'Tara, says the Gemara, the Mishnah in Kelim tells us, Zayit she'amru lo katam v'lo gadol ela benoni. The Zayit that we speak about is not a large one, it's not a small one, but it is a medium one. V'zehu aguri, and that is the benoni, the medium one is Zayit aguri, right? What we call the aguri olives. Rabbi Abahu, lo aguri shemo. Rabbi Abahu says, no, it's not. The name of it is not aguri, ela avruti shemo. The name of it is avruti, like avruti olives. Ve'amri le samrusi shemo. And there are those who say it's samrusi. Ve'lama nikras shemo aguri. It really is samrusi or avruti, but we call it aguri. So what's aguri? Why do we call this aguri? Because in Hebrew, shem agur means contained, gathered, because shimno agur betocho, because it's shemen, its oil is agur, it's gathered inside of it, is ready to pour out. Unlike other juices that you have to squeeze them, olives when they are ripened, you put them together already to start pouring out oil. So therefore it's a different, this was a specific type and it's called aguri. Okay. Nemak Tanai. Now we're going to discuss next time, Be'ezrat Hashem, that this is going to be like Machloket Tanaim, whether or not the Bar Kapara is going to have a story with Bar Kapara, a very interesting story of his two students, whether or not you say Shakon or you say Borei Pri Hadama and Shlakot. Be'ezrat Hashem will continue this in the days to come.